Attorney General Rob Bonta is in Los Angeles discussing the impacts of what he calls President Trump's illegal and chaotic tariffs across industries in California. Bonta hosted business leaders this morning for a roundtable conversation. It follows the state's recent lawsuit against the Trump administration over its use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977 to impose tariffs. Bonta says the tariffs are wreaking havoc on the U.S. financial system and causing, quote, uniquely immense harm to California's economy. The tariffs challenged under the lawsuit are projected to cost California consumers $25 billion and result in the loss of more than 64,000 jobs.
For more insight into these fresh tariff concerns, we're joined by Vinny Aggarwal, professor of business and politics at the UC Berkeley Haas School of Business. Vinny, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. And let's start with California and AG Bonta's comments. How much does the state stand to be impacted here by the president's tariff plan?
Well, California is a very highly dependent state in terms of trade, so we will be hurt a lot more than some states that import a lot less. We export a lot, we import a lot, so I think California is particularly harmed by using these tariffs in this particular way.
Yeah, Vinny, yesterday's announcement focused heavily on Asian countries. When we talk about the 25% threat to Japan and South Korea, does the strategy run the risk of those countries looking to another economic powerhouse like China instead of the U.S.?
Well, that's already been happening. I think countries are already looking for alternatives. The Canadians are looking to sell oil and gas to other countries, and Japan and Korea are part of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, and that's another area in which they can sell. So, in fact, we're trying to drive them into the arms of the Chinese. So this strategy looks like it works because you can always bully countries that are weaker than us, but at the end of the day, they're not stupid. They're going to start looking for other alternatives, which, of course, in this case is China. So I think that's not very problematic. The other thing that's problematic is this great deal of uncertainty that's generated for the American consumer. I mean, up and down, and for not just consumers, but for business. If you're trying to do business and you don't know what the tariff rate will be and it's going to go up and down, then President Trump said July 9th, now he's saying August 1st. We're back in the kind of uncertainty we had in March and April when President Trump kept imposing tariffs and then removing them. And this is like great tactics, but there's no coherent strategy here. And I find that very problematic, because if I was doing business, I would be very upset. In your own show, you were showing interviews with people who are concerned about the kinds of actions that President Trump has been taking.
Well, what do you think this signals about Trump's move here, about his frustration with trade negotiations that are proving to be more complicated and lengthy than the 90 days that he said he'd get this done in?
He said he'd get a lot of things done. I'm still waiting for the Ukraine-Russia war to end, which was supposed to end 24 hours after he became president. Look, this is great if you're a business person and you think you can do real estate deals. I teach international relations and political economy. It's insulting. You think this is how the world works? By, this is a real estate deal and you just go bully somebody and you threaten them? That's not the way the global system works. Sure, you can get good results and people go, rah, rah, we have a tough president, but that's not providing stability in the international global system, which the United States has been the greatest beneficiary over the last 70 years. We're the #1 country in the world. It didn't happen because we were protectionist and looking inward. It happened because we were a global superpower and we were a global trading power.
Yeah, Vinny, as it relates to those ongoing talks as we approach that August 1 deadline, when he announced the initial tariffs in April, many countries got to work trying to figure out how to avoid those tariffs. How do these new announcements perhaps change those negotiations moving forward?
Well, I think they're going to be nervous. I think they're going to try to transship more. I think some countries will commit to invest more in the United States. So I think, look, if you bully somebody, they will bend, right? I mean, after all, South Korea and Japan are dependent on the United States for national defense. We are their nuclear umbrella. If you were the South Koreans and the Japanese, I would be thinking about developing my own nuclear weapons, wouldn't you? Because it's logical, if we cannot rely on the United States, if they cannot rely on the United States, for them to seek alternatives. And you've already mentioned that. They're seeking alternatives in China for their markets, and they're going to seek alternatives in becoming their own independent military power and nuclear powers. If you think that's a great idea, well, great, it's working out really well. So you're going to get more proliferation, more turn towards China, and the end of the outcome will not necessarily be very great once we start having more and more inflation in the United States.
Quickly here, we just have very few seconds left, but I just want to go back and talk about Bonta today because he focused his talks with leaders in frontline industries, harbor businesses, drivers. What kind of confusion and unpredictability is that having on those industries right now?
Well, I think if you just keep changing what the tariff will be, and you say, well, this, I think we're going to do July 9, then the next few days you say it's going to be August 1. Then you say, well, there's going to be 200% tariffs on pharmaceuticals, which you just announced. This uncertainty is what business hates. Business can deal with certainty. If you said tariffs are going to be 20% on all countries for the next 10 years, I don't think it's a good idea, but at least business could adapt to that. But if you keep going up and down, and I'm negotiating deals, and I'm going to negotiate 90 deals, and as your own reporter said, we negotiated 2 deals. I mean, this is not a realistic approach to dealing with trade negotiations, which are highly complicated and highly important for the United States and its economy.
Okay, we'll have to leave the conversation there. Vinny Aggarwal with UC Berkeley. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Still ahead, the owner